This video is about the mania for child gender transitioning sweeping across the West, so there's going to be some of this.
They are in a polyamorous relationship.
Some of this.
If you're playing with some toys with them, you could assign one of their toys to be non-binary.
And some of this. In my last video, I spoke about libs of TikTok getting cancelled from social media for reporting on gender clinics transitioning children. In the last few years, there's been an explosion in child gender clinics, going from 2 to over 60 in the USA alone. Everyone in Hollywood seems to have a transgender child now, usually not a child they gave birth to themselves, because why would you go through the pain and hassle of squeezing a baby through your own fufu when you can just steal a child from Africa? Celebrities such as Angelina Jolie, Brad Pitt, Warren Beatty, Annette Bening and Jamie Lee Curtis have got trans kids. Jamie Lee Curtis's trans daughter got married dressed as a furry. Look, trans kids are one thing, but if your kid wants to be a furry, surely it's time to set some boundaries. And with more adults being trans or non-binary, they're going to have trans kids themselves. Noella is a 10-year-old trans model and activist, and both of her parents are trans activists. Man, I wonder where she got the idea from. And look at these parents.
This is Ari, Gwendolyn and Brynnifer. They are in a polyamorous relationship, and they all parent Hazel and Sparrow.
We have a 2-year-old anti-gender baby and a 10-year-old who is non-binary.
These polyamorous parents let their children choose their gender. And for their oldest child, Hazel, that's neither male nor female.
Please tell us how and why you decided to come out as non-binary.
Because the pronouns she and he did not fit. Non-binary was what I turned to, though I do choose to act and look more feminine.
Can I go down now?
Of course.
And 2.5-year-old Sparrow has yet to make a choice about their gender.
Sparrow, do you want a banana? They're anti-gender, but we're using they, them pronouns.
Particularly because it's, something that our parents did and they got it wrong.
A lot of people, they say, how will your children know what a boy or a girl are if you don't teach them?
Yeah. Or how will they know how to act?
There's a lot of assumption that we're raising them without a gender and we're not giving them any information as to what gender is, when that's just not the case.
They're in a polyamorous genderqueer three-way, like every online dating profile in London. The dad's a mum, the two mums are dads, and in a huge surprise, their child is non-binary. Oh, I wonder where they then got that idea. Amazing how there are so many trans and non-binary children of trans and non-binary people, but so few in Ugandan mountain villages. This video of a non-binary parent of a trans child explicitly shows the indoctrination.
9-year-old Kieran Clausen collects crystals. She dabbles in face paint and she loves sports.
What do you play?
I did play volleyball, soccer, and I want to play basketball.
To Kieran, who's transgender, it's not about racking up victories.
I don't want to win any trophies for it, though. I feel like that's the most unfair way to compete because it's not about winning.
What's it about?
Having fun with your friends.
You can see the kid looking at the non-binary genderqueer parental unit for guidance. Look at the parent mouthing the words.
For it, though. I feel like that's the most unfair way to compete because it's not about winning.
Man, that kid isn't answering the questions, they're just repeating what's been drilled into them by their parent. That level of indoctrination would embarrass a Scientologist. The more I see of child transitioning, the more it looks like a cult, just as fundamentalist Mormons tend to raise their kid as fundamentalist Mormons rather than Buddhist or Shia Muslim. It's the same for woke parents. They say they're just affirming what the children believe their gender to be, but so many kids are clearly influenced. And it's not just parents that are putting the ideas in kids' heads. Our schools, media, institutions and hospitals are all systemically woke and pushing this ideology of transitioning onto kids. The gender clinics performing life-changing surgeries such as penis removal, hysterectomies and mastectomies phrase it in ways that appeal to kids. Hospitals are sponsoring drag events. Pronoun ideology is on display in surgeries, and look at the language used by the doctors. Here's a Canadian surgeon who performs breast removal on teens to transition them, He's got a Santa hat on and he's saying, for all you good boys, Dr. McEvenue is not bringing gifts, he's taking them away. This isn't the language of someone appealing to adults. Vulnerable youth are being fast-tracked down an irreversible medical pathway, and in many places there is no minimum age for gender reassignment surgery. Schools also push the ideology. Libs of TikTok is a steady stream of blue-haired liberal teachers openly bragging about how they put gender ideology into the heads of impressionable youngsters. There are thousands of these examples. This teacher told 4-year-old students they might not be boys or girls and could have different pronouns like she does. Sorry, like they does.
Or use non-binary language with your kids. For example, if you're playing with some toys with them, you could assign one of their toys to be non-binary. So instead of always referring to their dolls or their animal toys as he or she, you can use they/them pronouns. When you're telling a story to your kids, you can have a character that's non-binary. So instead of saying she, you can have they or them. This introduces your kids to the idea that it's not just she, her, or he, him, and it's just a really easy way to get them used to the idea of they/them pronouns.
There's something chilling about that smile. It's the cold smile of unfettered power. Righteousness dressed up as kindness. It's the smile of every state apparatchik as they enjoy issuing a parking ticket or breaking up a family or sending a dissident to a re-education camp. Schools get drag queens in to teach kids about gender stuff. People say drag isn't sexualised, but if they're not sexualised, why have I got a boner? They've got names like Flowjob and Genitalia. I mean, this is hilariously risque at 11 PM on stage in front of adults, but in schools, that's about as appropriate as taking children to a drag show, which they also do, sometimes so the kids could dress up and dance in front of adults in return for money, and sometimes just to teach the kids the correct etiquette when shoving dollar bills into the G-string of a man in lingerie. This equality and diversity questionnaire in a Scottish primary school asked kids if they're transgender. Why are they putting these questions into primary school kids' heads? Another questionnaire asked children how much anal sex they'd had. Why are they asking this question? It's implying to kids that there's an appropriate amount of anal sex they should be having. What if the local grooming gang doesn't have the capacity to keep up and do the whole primary school? If anyone else asked your kids how much anal sex they'd had, they'd be arrested and punched in the face. Why does that change when the person asking is from the government? Any kid who tries to get some respite from the relentless gender woo-woo in the classroom won't find any respite in the library. Hundreds of kids' books push this ideology. This Nancy comic by genderqueer author Maya Kababi, ooh, I'm hungry now, talks about trans siblings tasting their own vagina slime. I think I'll get my kids the Beano instead. And any teachers who refuse to kowtow to the gender woo-woo cult are punished, such as this teacher in Ireland who was suspended and then jailed following a refusal to use non-binary gender pronouns for a pupil. You might be wondering why he was jailed. It's because the gulags aren't quite ready yet. And a school chaplain was fired from Trent College because during LGBTQIA++ training at the school, he refused to join in a chant of "Smash heteronormativity." I mean, he's a chaplain, so he's representing an organisation that has heteronormativity at its heart. Not content with firing him, the school then reported him to the police counter-terror services because refusal to comply with LGBTQ ideology is seen as terrorism now. Well, you'll be relieved to hear that the counter-terror police investigated him but found that this particular school chaplain proved no terrorism risk. I'm not making this up. Why is this happening? Why is society gripped by this mania to transition as many kids as possible and silence anyone who questions it? The big answer is money. This graph charts the explosion of gender transitions in Canada, a similar ratio to other Western countries. It's growing exponentially every year. This map shows the growth of gender clinics in America. It's growing faster than laser tag did in the 90s. This is big business now. The US gender reassignment surgery market was valued at $1.9 billion in 2021 and is expected to expand at around 11% every year over the next decade to around $5 billion a year by 2030. To maintain this growth rate, within a couple of decades, everyone in the West will have to surgically transition between genders every 3 days, with huge environmental devastation caused by discarded genitalia. Landfill sites will be overrun by unwanted breaths, and never mind plastic straws. turtles will be choking to death on the severed penises of liberal children. And there's something more sinister going on. There's a visible effort by parts of the left to blur the boundaries with regard to sex with children and normalise paedophilia. This video of a liberal teacher shows her telling the kids not to judge paedophiles.
Stop calling them that. You're not allowed to label people like that here.
What?
Stop it, Diego.
Yeah, no,
We're not going to call them that. We're going to call them MAPs. No. Minor attracted persons.
No.
So don't judge people just because they want to have sex with a 5-year-old.
It's a bit different to when I was a kid and we were taught about stranger danger. Now kids are taught that the most important thing is to be careful not to discriminate against the person who's abusing you. Well, I guess it partly explains why grooming gangs operate so freely in Labour-controlled areas. This doctor says paedophiles should be part of the LGBTQ community. Leading Democrat John Podesta, an advisor to the Clintons and Biden, has dodgy child porn-esque artwork on his walls. If that's what he's hanging on his walls, I'd hate to see what's on his hard drive. Twitter made their priorities clear when they suspended libs of TikTok for reporting on child gender transitioning, but refused to take down actual child porn, saying it didn't contravene their terms of service. And the widespread prescription of puberty blockers suspends development and keeps children in a childlike state until they reach the age of consent. I mean, could that possibly be a motive for it? But why are liberal parents so intent on transitioning kids in the first place? Well, society currently sees heterosexuality and cisgender, that's when your gender matches your biology, as bad, and any sort of queerness and non-normal gender behaviour as inherently good and progressive. People used to show off to their neighbours with a luxury car in the drive. Now materialism is seen as gauche, so the true elites among us show off with luxury beliefs that can only be attained by investing time and money in reading the right progressive publications and following the latest fashionable thought trends. Look how progressive and enlightened I am. My child is transgender. As virtue signalling goes, it's the living embodiment of having the right flags in a Twitter bio. Wokeism is a new religion, filling the whole left by the departure of traditional religions such as Christianity from the lives of so many educated modern people. Wokeism has all the bad things a religion has: sin, guilt, public shaming, the promise of a utopia if everyone follows the tenets, a righteous certainty that empowers and enables any vengeful behaviour. But it has none of the good things such as redemption, humility or forgiveness, and its tenets change all the time, and piety must be demonstrated not by a pilgrimage or self-flagellation, but by virtue signalling. You do this by listing your pronouns in email signatures, which is an empty gesture. Everybody knows what your pronouns are, Brian. Or by posting a black square on Instagram, or driving to a climate change march to take pics to put on Instagram, or waving the correctly updated pride flag with the brown stripe and the trans triangle. The ultimate virtue signal in 2022 though is to have a trans child, so woke parents transition their children. Just as some fundamentalist religions practice genital mutilation to ensure the piety of the children, so the new religion of wokeism practices its own, with children mutilated and made infertile. What I'm saying now will get criticised as transphobic and far right and everything else, but look, honestly, I'm not transphobic. I've got maximum respect for transgender people and support them. I just don't think this stuff should be pushed on children. I swear in a few years' time the scale of this scandal and the damage done will become apparent. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, well, maybe enjoy is the wrong word, but like and subscribe anyway. Just do it. And you can also support me making these videos on PayPal and Patreon. There's a link in the comments. Patrons get early access, by the way, and also a Patreon-only podcast. And I'm starting a new stream show called Clown World, where I go through all the craziest woke excesses of the week. Anyway, thanks for listening. Bye. Bye-bye.